I don't know how I ended up here. I just don't know how I ended up here. I thought I lived a great life, but I went out of my way to make everybody comfortable and happy. I felt very lonely at times in recent years. I mean, everybody loved me, but I don't know why I was feeling so alone all the time. And there was things that were happening in my life that I guess caught up to me.
Wow. And you guess it did catch up to him. Mr. O.J. Simpson, you are watching Keeping It Honest with yours truly, Anthony Parker, as we keep it honest with O.J. Simpson, the man, the legacy. So many different things. Where were you when O.J. Simpson passed away? When he passed away at the age of 76, did you think of the football player, the Hall of Fame person? Did you think of the TV star? Did you think of a movie star? Did you think of the advertising commercial guy, the hearse where he ran through the airport? Did you think of the Love Boat charismatic person? Did you think of the African American who some people felt, especially African Americans, that he wasn't African American? Or did you think of the possibly cold-blooded killer of two people? We're keeping it honest here with yours truly, Anthony Parker. And you have any questions or comments, you can email yours truly. It's ParkerMan2011 at gmail.com, ParkerMan2011 at gmail.com. You can also text me, leave me a voice message. That number is 216-702-3718, 216-702-3718. You know, with OJ, it makes you think, man, this guy, he had a great life at the beginning. And the rest of that life, man, the rest half of his life, it was riddled with controversy and doubt. No matter how you live, and his epitaph and anybody's, his is going to be maybe first football player, movie TV star, and possible killer. Wow. So where were you at on that night that changed the world with OJ and the Bronco? Where were you at? If you heard him at the beginning, okay, there are things that he wanted to do. I think he wanted to be loved by everybody. And unfortunately, he was loved by some and not everybody. So we're going to talk about him. And we're going to do, which I like on this show, we're going to do things with Parker Twist. We're going to go back to that trial of the O.J. Simpson trial, Nicole Simpson and Mr. Goldman. We're going to go back to that trial and what happened at that day. That day, or throughout those months that was taking place with that trial, it started court TV. It started people watching TV. And it started people getting, I guess, interested in killings. A cold case. Technically, this is still a cold case. If OJ didn't do it, then who did it? So, little background, a little bit. OJ Simpson, unfortunately, passed away at the age of 76. And he was surrounded by his children and grandchildren. He was the first player to reach a rushing mark that many thought couldn't be done in a 14-game season when he went over 2,000 yards. So the moment he was found, that was football, okay? The moment he was found guilty changed the world, changed everybody, blacks and whites and everything. I've got a list of the jurors right here that were on the O.J. Simpson trial. We're going to go through that. But long before he became known as, you know, did he do it or did he not? People loved him. He was the most famous football player besides Jim Brown of all time. He became a football star at USC. He was born July 9th, 1947 in San Francisco, California, and he changed how people look at athletes. He enrolled at USC after attending City College of San Francisco for 2 years, and he finished second in the Heisman Trophy that year. And that next year, he got the Heisman Trophy. He was a nearly perfect running back. This guy he was fast. 6'1", 212 pounds. He was part of a relay event and they won that. In the 1969 Common Draft, the Buffalo Bills took him. He stayed there for some years. First couple of years, he was kind of slow. First 3 years, didn't really take on. But in 72, the Bills hired a new coach, Lou Saban, and he turned, Simpson to a star. This guy was just a great athlete. And then how do you separate the man from the things that they've done? So the Football Hall of Fame, they put their flags down for him. Where some people would say, why would you put your flags down for a supposed killer? So he was an all-pro guy, did a couple of movies, got married, had 5 kids. We're going to talk about that. And everybody loved him. But some people say African Americans didn't love him because he wasn't really a black athletic superstar in black people's eyes. But when that O.J. Simpson trial came up, man, he wanted to be loved by African Americans. And in some people's eyes, he was, in some people's eyes, he wasn't. So what we're going to do on this show today, we are going to have, okay, this is going to be good. We're going to give you an update, and this is what I like about the O.J. Simpson, whether you like him or not, we're going to keep it real. CBS News recently did a story about O.J. and his life, the good and the bad. I've looked at all these other videos across, and this is one that I like because they discussed issues that people didn't discuss. And we're going to be a part of this discussion. We're going to talk about some of the things that really we should be talking, because we're not just keeping it simple. We're not just keeping it real, but we're keeping it honest. So we're going to be a part of this discussion of the legacy of O.J. Simpson and how much of that legacy is something that, well, you know what, we may feel comfortable or may not feel comfortable with.
At the age of 76, after a battle with prostate cancer, Simpson was diagnosed in February and was undergoing chemotherapy. There had been reports that perhaps he was in hospice care, reports that he denied. His family tweeted, though, on his X account saying that he was surrounded by family, and they asked for privacy and grace during their time of transition. Simpson made the NFL Hall of Fame after an 11-year career with San Francisco and Buffalo. He was also infamously at the forefront of a major criminal trial in the 1990s.
So on April 10th, our father, Orenthio James Simpson, succumbed to his battle with cancer. He was surrounded by his children and grandchildren. During this time of transition, his family asked that you please respect their wishes for privacy and grace. And Mr. Goldman, the father, okay, all these years later, he says, even though OJ died, think of my son.
After he was accused of murdering his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. Perhaps that trial has overshadowed any of his accomplishments on the field or during his broadcasting career as well. He was acquitted of all those charges, though, but in a separate 9 years in prison after being found guilty for a 2007 armed robbery in Las Vegas. He was released on parole in 2000. He was released on parole, I believe, in 2017. And so now there will be a lot of discussion about his life and legacy, a powerhouse on the field, an incredibly impactful spokesperson and broadcaster. But the trial for the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman is what looms large. The entire country was transfixed, not only when there was news of the murder, but on the day that he was supposed to turn himself into police, he slipped away and embarked on this hours-long slow speed chase in the back of that white Bronco.
And how many people remember that if you were alive, O.J. Simpson on the highway with all the cameras and the media following him as he's, I guess, trying to see about killing himself, but they call it the greatest slow speed chase ever.
The nation was riveted. The chase was covered on cable news, followed by helicopters and news cameras. And really, the entire nation stopped to watch them. Turned back to his home, and the reports are that he was given a chance to go inside his Brentwood home, drink some orange juice, and then turn himself in.
How many people remember that right there? There's OJ and his buddy driving. OJ is right there, and there's his buddy right there driving.
The trial itself was a moment in American history. It was one of the times that cable news was able to air a trial from beginning to end. And he had with him what was called a dream team of attorneys.
And he did have a dream team of attorneys. We're going to talk about that part too. And we're also going to talk about are his kids at now as this thing is trying to get back.
Johnny Cochran, Robert Kardashian. Now his own children are more famous than Robert Kardashian. Robert Shapiro and F. Lee Bailey. And
right there, that's the guy that was married to the Kardashians, the mom.
They embarked on a defense that was riveting. Anyone who watched this trial remembers sort of the key words. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Something close to that. And it all had to do with whether or not a glove fit on O.J. Simpson's hands. That was sort of a key pivotal moment in the trial. So you heard Ed Gordon talking with Gayle King just a short time ago, and he's joining us now.
So Ed Gordon is a African-American broadcaster, been around for years, interviewed a bunch of people. I didn't know that he had interviewed O.J. Simpson a couple of times.
He was the first journalist to speak with Simpson after that infamous acquittal. Thank you so much for pivoting over to us. Ed, this is that trial, and the conclusion of that trial, it's one of those moments where if you were alive, you remember where you were at the time. And
that's right.
As the viewers know, Ed, I was not in this country at the time. I was in Canada. I was still in school, and no one was in class. Everyone was watching the verdict, and there were cheers and there were groans. It was a moment of.
And if you were watching that in school, cheers and groans, do you remember, were there more cheers and groans from African Americans or cheers and groans from non-African Americans?
Sort of great division.
It was all of that. And if you think about the trial, and as you noted, it was broadcast daily. It became a true reality show. You know, we call reality shows that, but they are not. And this had people transfixed. People were skipping not only class, some people would skip work at times, and certainly work had stopped altogether the day the verdict was announced. And if ever we wanted to see an indication, we talk so much about the division in this nation between the races today, but if ever we wanted to see an illustration of that, that certainly the day that verdict came down was it when you looked at the personification of division.
Yeah, I think that's so clear. And I think, excuse me, Ed, as I clear my throat a little, I think that over time, people's opinions about that verdict evolved and changed. But at that moment, and you sort of really articulated it really well with Gayle, there was this idea that the justice system is rigged against African African Americans. And for once, here is a Black man who's able to beat the system.
So, you know what? Let's go into that as we're talking about the verdict. And let me know, too. I'm just curious. Where were you at when the verdict to the O.J. Simpson trial happened? Were you born? Were you in school? Were you a kid? Were you an adult? How much of that verdict changed your impressions of African Americans and pretty much what they do and how they feel and everything? So, what I have right here, which is really something I think is really, really interesting. I've got this, the O.J. Simpson jury, right here. Okay, we had 8 Black females, 2 white females, 1 Hispanic male, and 1 Black male. There were no Caucasians, no white people on this jury. You talk about your peers. And if O.J. killed Nicole and Mr. Goldman, you have Black females, 8. 2 white females, 1 Hispanic male, and 1 Black male. So what if it was split? What if it was all whites and well, 6 whites and 6 blacks? What would it be like then? Would you feel that this could have been a different trial? 8 Black females. How many of these people said that he was guilty? How many people said that he was innocent? So what we're going to do now, we're going to go back in time to this verdict in the court, because a lot of people watch court drama stuff now. So we're going to go back, because this is technically where all the court drama people watching TV stuff started. And I'm going to take you back right before history was history.
It has been fascinating to watch and listen to them all across the country, in all the media in the last 24 hours. No offense intended, back as quickly as they can into a position of saying they have not much more to go on than their gut instincts, and saying again, as has been said so many times, that the jury has, in their view, reason to find reasonable doubt. Also has, in their view, reason to find that Mr. Simpson was guilty based on the evidence. Here again is Judge Ito.
And the record should reflect that we have now been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel and our alternates. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Mrs. Robertson, would you, do you have the envelope with the sealed verdict forms, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, would you give those to Deputy Trower?
So again, this is when the final verdict is being given for the O.J. Simpson trial, and what changed racial history. Is this division still as much as far as racially now as it was then? This is history in the making.
And would you return those to our 4-person juror number 1?
And what a life O.J. lived after that, and the rest of the world.
All right, Madam 4-person, would you please open the envelope and check the condition of the verdict forms?
And how a twist can change your life. For the worse and the better. And you're watching Keeping It Honest with yours truly, Anthony Parker. Keeping It Honest with O.J. Simpson. Maybe that's something he did or didn't do. All in the eyes of the beholder. Right next to him is sitting Johnny Cochran. Remember, this is before DVDs.
There are 4 forms, and there is the question of first or second degree murder or acquittal.
So what if
They're
he
not long, but there are 4 of them.
All right, Madam 4-person, you've had the opportunity to review the verdict forms. Are they
What if he was charged for murder? How history would have changed.
the same forms that you signed, and are they in order? All right, would you hand those please to Deputy Trevor? And you have signed and dated those verdict forms indicating the jury's verdict. All right, thank you.
Tell me what you're thinking as you're seeing this, and for some of you, you may not have ever seen this because we see the
All
chair.
right, ladies and gentlemen, and of the jury, I'm going to ask that you carefully listen to the verdicts as they are being read by the clerk, Mrs. Robertson. As after the verdicts have been read, you will be asked if these are your verdicts. And I would caution the audience during the course of the reading of these verdicts to remain calm, and that if there is any disruption during the reading of the verdicts, the bailiffs will have the obligation to remove any persons disrupting these proceedings. All right, Mrs. Robertson.
And here we go. What if history would have been different?
All right, Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury? Mrs. Robertson.
Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA 097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information.
A human being, which I have to hear.
Superior Court of the State of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information.
Yeah.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, further find a special circumstance that the defendant Orenthal James Simpson has in this case been convicted of at least one crime of murder of the first degree and one or more crimes of murder of the first or second degree to be not true. Signed this second day of October 1995, juror 230. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict? So say you one, so say you all.
All right, counsel, Mr. Simpson, would you be seated, please?
And look at that. You saw the Goldman family, and to this day, even with OJ's death, Mr. Goldman still stands by OJ killing his daughter. Killing his son.
Let's have it quiet in the courtroom, please. All right, Mrs. Robertson, would you please poll the jurors?
And you wonder to this day, how many of these people, some of those attorneys still feel that maybe OJ was guilty, or maybe OJ was innocent.
Juror number 1, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 2, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 3, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 4, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 5, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 6, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 7, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 8, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 9, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 10, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 11, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 12, as to count 1, is this your verdict?
It's good and bad. Everybody was affected by this OJ case, not just him.
Juror number 1, is to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 2, is to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 3, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 4, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 5, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 6, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 7, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 8, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 9, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 10, as to count 2, is this your verdict?
And he is
Juror number 11, as to count 2, is this your verdict? Juror number 12, as to count 2, is this your verdict?
Death.
All right, the clerk is directed to record the verdicts as read. The parties agree to waive reading of the verdicts as recorded. Mr. Cochran, do you waive reading of the verdicts as recorded? Ms. Clark, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to at this time take this opportunity to publicly thank you for the service that you've given to us. The burdens that we've placed upon you were enormous, and words can't begin to express the debt that we owe to you for the time and patience and exertion that you've given to us during the course of this case. I will have an opportunity to meet with you privately later, and I'll give you my private comments when we have a chance to meet. I want to caution you at this time that there is, as you know, intense media interest in this case. The news media will probably seek you out at your home or at your place of business. And I would implore that the news media act responsibly to avoid harassing you or identifying you without your consent or otherwise causing you concern. Whether you wish to cooperate with the news media is, of course, entirely up to you. However, I must warn you to expect the worst as far as that is concerned. We want to, I know I share with you in expressing our thanks to the bailiffs from the Sheriff's Department, to our court reporters, Ms. Foxham and Ms. Olson, to the research attorney, John Byrne, who's assisted us, our Pepperdine law clerks, Mr. Golub and Ms. Carswell, our media liaison, Jerry Ann Hazlett and her staff, and of course, the jury commissioner, Gloria Gomez, and her staff. All right, counsel, is there anything we need to take up before we excuse the jurors, Mr. Cochran?
This was called the trial of the century. Movies were written about this. TV shows were written about this.
Well, you can see precisely what we can see. Mr. Goldman's family, sister profoundly shaken by this, and elsewhere in the courtroom you can see that in another way, Mr. Simpson's family is profoundly moved in many ways, and Nicole Brown's sisters.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I am
have their
now
children.
going to excuse you from further service on this case. As you know, this does absolve you from your vows of silence. You may take with you your juror notebooks as you have requested, and we'll be chatting with you shortly. All right, thank you very much, and I'll see you all later. All right.
F. Lee Bailey, Mr. Simpson, Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro to the left, Robert Kardashian, his friend and lawyer, there in tears, as was O.J. Simpson's oldest son, Jason.
Have a seat, please.
And as we said, there's an alternative. There's an alternative now for him to, under normal circumstances, walk out if you're a free man, but he will, in all likelihood, go back to the Los Angeles County Jail and be processed.
All right, Ms.
out.
Clark, Mr. Cochran.
And there is now an opportunity for members of the family, members of the press who've been there for all these many days to leave the courtroom and go about their business. For Marsha Clark. And
transported to an appropriate chair's facility.
So there you go. O.J. Simpson, relieved right there. Was that one of the last times he was relieved? And it's funny because years later, when he was tried for kidnapping, and which was an interesting case, he went to jail for 9 years. He seemed to deal with that better than he did with this murder case.
At least forthwith. All right, we'll stand in recess.
And that's the
Marsha Clark and others now enormous, in legal terms, an enormous defeat, certainly an enormous victory for Johnny Cochran and Mr. Simpson's defense team. And we now go outside the Los Angeles Criminal Courts building, where Ken Kashiwahara is out there on the steps. First, Ken, I assume there's been a reaction out there.
emotional as it was inside the courtroom, it was nearly as emotional out here, although in a different sense.
Wow, man. So there you have it, the live version. Well, not even version, but the live reaction of the O.J. Simpson trial as it was literally taking place all those years ago. Wow. You're watching yours truly, keeping it honest with Anthony Parker. We don't just keep it simple. We don't just keep it real. We keep it honest, and we're keeping it honest with this O.J. Simpson trial and talking to you guys about what happened back then. Not just talking to you, but also showing you what it was about. You can contact us, parkerman2011@gmail.com, parkerman2011@gmail.com. You can text me, 216-702-3718, 216-702-3718. Even leave a voicemail if you like. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and share button. So, little timeline again on O.J. Simpson. In 1968, he won the Heisman Trophy. In 1973, he started, making an impact with the Buffalo Bills. He was drafted first. He was there for 11 years. He only made the playoffs once, but he was a top 10 MVP player ever since he was playing. So he was known as the Juice. His on-field accomplishments and media engagements was profound. People just loved this guy. In 1975, he became the TV pitchman for Hertz. He was able to sell cars, Mustangs, LTDs, any fine car he was doing. 1988, he decided to start becoming an actor. He was in Roots. I didn't even know that. Wow, in 1977, he was in a Towering Inferno, the mega movie in 1975. He did Monday Night Football for 3 years. He was an announcer. And his biggest success was the Naked Gun movies. He was pretty funny in there. Wow. 1994, June 12th, Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman are murdered. That's when his life turned very tragic. In 1994-95, he had to travel, and that was done with the bloody gloves. In 1997, they did a civil judgment. Now, Mr. Goldman did win that. They found OJ liable, and he had to pay more than $30 million. And at the time of his death, he hadn't even paid half of that. 2008, theft charges and prison. He supposedly robbed some people because he said that they had his memorabilia. He had a gun. They gave him a kidnapping charge. He was sentenced to 33 years. He served 9. In 2017, he was released. And after that, he still got on, social media and everything. Some people liked to see him. Some people didn't like to see him. And then on February 11th was his last text to people. And we're going to show that throughout the show, what his last text was about. But was this a guy that was craving attention? Now, that's the thing that I'm curious about. Was he the one that really he had to be there? Did we really want to see more of OJ, especially after he got out of prison? Some people are just kind of tired of him. But we're going to go back to the story, which I thought was interesting, where CBS was talking about the OJ that we liked, that we didn't like, and that was just here.
It seems sort of ludicrous at the time, sort of part of the logic for many people when they saw him being acquitted.
What's your credit card debt balance? If it's $10,000 or more, here are 3 easy solutions you can leave you around for if you're only making minimum payments or have fallen behind. Minimum payments could literally keep you in debt for decades. $10,000 in debt can take anywhere from
Yeah, that was certainly part of the ethos. And I think the other divisions that you saw is people wanted to know where you lined up before the verdict came down. I can recall many white colleagues asking me, well, what do you think? What do you feel about OJ? It was a real idea of force, and it was simple for them. And so, again, we don't want to lose sight that two people lost their lives in all of this in a gruesome way, and it's very sad. And we still all grieve and pray for those family members. You never get over something like that, even after all of these years. But we also have to remember that the Simpson family, certainly had a rough go of it. His children had a rough go of it after the fact. And so there were no winners. There was no way to, button this up neatly. This was just a sad day across the board.
Yeah, I know certainly it was a frustration for the Goldman family and for the Simpson family, for Nicole's sister, who became a very sort of outspoken advocate for those who were victims of domestic violence. It was very frustrating for them to watch O.J. Simpson not only walk free, but also kind of become a kind of like a cult personality almost. It was something that they tried.
And it was interesting because for people who was affected by this, they still kept seeing OJ just cavalier, just doing his own thing.
To remind the public that these two people had been murdered. But as time went on, there was increased distance between the horror of the crime and this sort of character that O.J. Simpson became. Ed, I want you to just sort of hang on a little bit because I want to bring in CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman. Ricky, were you, I think Court TV, this kind of put Court TV on the map. Were you working for Court TV at the time?
Not only was I working for Court TV, Anne-Marie, but I was specifically hired in order to anchor the O.J. Simpson case. So that was the beginning of my television career. And the first appearance that I had on Court TV was at the preliminary hearing. And then during the course of 1995, was in Los Angeles with the late, great Fred Graham to anchor the case for Court TV. Then I also followed on television for Court TV the robbery trial that later happened in Las Vegas. And then finally for CBS did the parole hearing. So he has really been part of the arc of this second career for me after practicing law. I think that there can be no doubt, as the previous commentators have noted, that the day of the verdict was a day of reckoning in this country. And we really saw the difficulty of the race divide on that day. When you were present for those many months in Los Angeles, watching the trial all day long, commenting, analyzing the trial, you had a different feeling when you were watching it on camera than when you had a moment where you were allowed to go into the courtroom and realize the charisma of this man. He would be brought from his holding cell. And there are those people, and they're very few indeed, who have something about them that the room vibrates from them. And of course, the infamous moment at the trial that I think none of us could ever forget, every viewer in the country who saw it, was the day he tried on the glove and that the glove did not fit. And of course, it created Johnny Cochran's brilliant closing argument, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. We knew, Anne-Marie, that I would say Fred Graham and I knew that there could be no doubt that after the jury had deliberated for 4 hours on the first day and then said that they had a verdict and that the verdict would be announced the following day, it had to have been an acquittal because they could not have possibly sifted through all those months worth of evidence to come up with a guilty verdict. So we were up on a scaffold, and when you look down, there were demonstrators all over the streets. It was a bit of a circus, a carnival, people wearing O.J. Simpson masks, having T-shirts already with a, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And what got lost in that, which goes back to your previous guest, what got lost in that was the horror of the crime. What got lost in that was the anguish of the victims' families and the people who were so invested in having O.J. Simpson convicted. Keep in mind one other fact in my soliloquy here, if you will, that this was one of the first cases that was televised nationally where the defense, in great part, was that O.J. Simpson was framed, that the glove had been dropped by a police officer named Mark Furman to frame O.J. Simpson, that the blood had been carried by a Detective Van Adder and brought back to the crime scene because he didn't log it into the property office. There were all kinds of factors that could have led to the not guilty verdict, including the prosecutor's decision to try the case in downtown Los Angeles instead of in court in Santa Monica, where they would have had a very different jury.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, Ed, Ricky. And I want to pivot over to Ed to add like a little more kind of historical context, because, you know, Ricky brought up Mark Furman.
And we're going to talk about, too, where are some of these people at now that were involved with this O.J. Simpson trial?
And that became kind of a whole other conversation of the LAPD, about the relationship that the LAPD had with the African-American community. And I think that also added to the feeling that many Black people felt about O.J. Simpson's acquittal.
I think it's important that we note that both can be true. As we look back historically on the way that the crime scene was handled, Van Adder and the others, and certainly the back Mark Furman brought to the table, you know, all became part of the mix. A Hollywood movie would say, well, that's just way too much.
Yeah.
And so certainly the dubious relationship the LAPD with African Americans over the years, that's factoring people's thoughts of, you know, it being believable that some of the things that were whispered about that possibly could have happened, a frame up and the like, could not be dismissed easily. And so all of these things, you know, the confluence of everything that happened really made this what it was. It was a phenomenon. It was an extraordinary time for this nation, and quite frankly, much bigger than simply the trial.
And you have to remember this, if you were there watching this changed everything. It changed how people watch TV. It changed how people think of the courts in some ways. Some people today say that it's still racism involved in this court, and that an African-American man is always the first to go to jail. How much of this has changed since the 90s?
It really was. And Ricky, I want you to talk a little bit about, you know, O.J. Simpson was the central figure, but it was like everyone else involved became these larger than life characters as well. Mark Furman, certainly one of them. Marsha Clark and Christopher Darden. You know, I remember kind of people watching what Marsha Clark wore and how she wore her hair, and of course the dream team of attorneys. It was like we were watching a movie unfold and not a criminal trial.
It was the sublime and the ridiculous all at the same time. I had gotten to know Johnny Cochran prior to this, was actually in his office when he received the call to be a part of the team. And so I was on the phone with Carl Douglas, as Ricky suggested, when the idea or the word came down that the verdict was back. And Carl said, I got to go. We got a verdict. And I said, you can't. Like Ricky, I thought, how could they have a verdict this quickly? And he said, I'll call you back. And he hung up because they had to get back. He had left thinking, okay, they're not going to come back this quickly. Yeah. So many people had to rush back to the courthouse. And so, you know, I don't think anyone who wasn't born or wasn't old enough to recall what this was, I don't think we can fully articulate and explain the chokehold that this trial and this murder and these incidents had on this nation and on the world, quite frankly.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on with that. And as both of you are talking, there are these images that are kind of coming back to me, right? Of course, the image of O.J. Simpson trying to fit this glove on his hand. When the announcement of the acquittal happens and O.J. Simpson's face and Johnny Cochran's hand on his shoulder and Robert Kardashian's face at the time, because I remember the conversation was that Robert Kardashian almost looked stunned, like he himself did not expect that verdict.
Yes, because I remember that. And I think they said that maybe the Kardashian guy, that was OJ's best friend, might have felt before he passed away that OJ was guilty.
Ricky, I'm wondering if you got a chance to talk to any sort of, in your career, any of the members of the Dream Team about what it was like to participate in this trial.
I was friends before the trial, during and after the trial with both Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, who were the science guys. And this was a trial in great part based on DNA, having to do with that blood sample and where blood should have been and where blood wasn't and where blood was. They were friends, as I say, for many, many years and still are. Johnny Cochran and I became friends during the trial. We had an extraordinary friendship and then later did a TV show together called Cochran and Company. I was company. And
I saw that show. It was on cable. It was on for a couple of years too. It was a pretty good show.
Johnny Cochran came to my surprise 50th birthday. And then my husband and I think we would say we were quite honored to be on the guest list for Johnny Cochran's funeral, which was one of the most amazing things I have ever witnessed. And of course, Johnny Cochran was a civil rights lawyer. He was a women's rights lawyer. He was a champion for people who did not have money and fame. And when he was at this funeral, of which there were literally thousands of people, both outside and inside, and you had people outside Johnny Cochran's funeral with one of many of Johnny Cochran's books who were weeping. It was an extraordinary display, particularly of the African-American community, of what he meant to them. Mm-hmm. And the answer to your question is yes, I have spoken with those people about how they reacted at the time of the verdict. But what happens in a private conversation of recollection is that I think, as Ed says, people were stunned on the defense team, and yet they knew because of the length of the deliberation and because of the power of Johnny Cochran's closing argument. And as I mentioned, the charisma of Simpson trying on that glove as close to the jury pool as about a foot away. And he went from juror to juror, that all things were going to bring back an acquittal.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because so they had months that they could, the jurors taking all this information. And in a matter of days, they have their answer. Wow. So it'd be interesting to see what these jurors are doing now. Speaking of now, you are watching Keeping It Honest. O.J. Simpson. With yours truly, Anthony Parker Alexander. Did he keep it honest? Well, only God will judge. We don't know. He knows, O.J. and God. So they were talking about some of the personalities that were involved with the O.J. Simpson trial that became famous, some of the judges, the Dream Team, and also the opposition. So he's talking about Marcia Clark. What is she doing now? So she was the trial's lead prosecutor. She resigned from the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office after the case, and she left the practice of law. She wrote a book, Without a Doubt, and she got $4 million for this. Wow. She's 70 now. She's gone on to write a series of books, crime novels, and has also appeared as a television commentator about high-profile trials. I think I've seen her too a couple times. Johnny Cochran. You know him, you love him, you just can't get enough of him. We really did like Johnny Cochran. Very smooth guy, very charismatic too. So he was Simpson's lead attorney, and he was on the dream team. And he's the one that said, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And everybody knows that now. So after the trial, he continued to practice law. He appeared on TV as a commentator, but he died of brain cancer in 2005 at the age of 68. F. Lee Bailey, a famous man, famous attorney, another member of the Dream Team. 87-year-old F. Lee Bailey. He had represented Patty Hearst. He was the one that was kidnapped years ago in the 70s and then became a part of the kidnap party. So he fell from grace after the trial. He was disbarred in Florida and Massachusetts for his handling of stock owned by a drug smuggler client. Wow. He also filed for bankruptcy in 2016. And even after passing the bar in Maine, he was denied a license to practice. Wow. He passed away at age 87 in June 2021. He was in hospice care in Atlanta. Unfortunately, a bad fall from grace. Robert Kardashian. So he was one of Simpson's oldest friends. They met as students at USC, and Simpson served as his best man a while at the Kardashians' 78 wedding to Kris, who of course later became Kris Jenner. Kardashian was not a practicing lawyer when Simpson's trial began, but this was interesting. But he reactivated his practice to join the defense team. He maintained serious doubts about Simpson's innocence, and he was his best friend. And the two stopped speaking after the trial. He died of cancer, unfortunately, in 2003 at age 59. Since his death, Kardashian's ex-wife and his children, Courtney, Kim, Chloe, and Rob, have become mega celebrities, keeping up with the Kardashians. Chris Darden, somebody very emotional as an attorney. He either liked him or you didn't. He took flack because he was the African-American guy against the African-American guy. Johnny Cochran against Chris Darden. And it was interesting because it was old school against new school, trying to save or put O.J. Simpson in jail. Like his co-counsel, Marcia Clark, Darden resigned from the DA's office after the trial. He went on to teach law at California State University. And Clark, he decided also to become a writer, wrote a book. In 1999, he started his own practice specializing in criminal defense. He's still practicing law, most notably representing Eric Holder, the man charged with killing hip-hop mogul Nipsey Hussle. But Darden withdrew from the case, saying his family had received death threats. Darden, now 68, he just recently ran for judge of a Superior Court in Los Angeles County, and he's appeared as a local commentator. And so it's interesting because he ran for judge, and I saw one of the interviews, and I think still his legacy is tainted because of the O.J. Simpson trial, because he was on the other side, black man trying to get a black man. And so he ran for judge, and you'd think he would have won, but he lost by about 30%, and that was recent. Wow. So that legacy, sometimes doing what you're doing, depending on who you are and your stance that you have, it may come to help you or hurt you. Kris Jenner, she was good friends with Nicole Simpson. Her and her husband, and OJ and Nicole used to go out a lot. In 1991, she divorced Kardashian and she married Bruce Jenner, who became another gender, no pun intended. They divorced it in 2015. After the trial, she shot to fame with her reality series, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. And she's 68. She remains one of the most visible public figures. Alan Dershowitz, this guy's like been around for years. He was an attorney for the Klaus Van Buren murder trial, very famous. He emerged as a celebrity super lawyer. He's represented Jeffrey Epstein, Julian Assange, and Harvey Weinstein. That's to tell you where he's coming from, okay? He's 85 now, and he's also advising President Trump. Lance Ito, Judge Ito, he's a famous judge. He's the one that decided to let televisions showcase the trial. And after that, everybody's showcasing the trial. He's 73 now. He's kept a low profile since the trial. Robert Shapiro. He's one of Simpson's dream team lawyers. He always argued with F. Lee Bailey. A lot of people didn't want to work with F. Lee Bailey. He's now 81 years old. His own son, Brett, died from a drug overdose in 2005, so he founded the Brett Shapiro Foundation, a nonprofit that aims to raise drug awareness and also a rehabilitation facility. So good has come from that. Wow. He's represented Rod Potassium. He's represented Eva Longoria. And this is what I thought was interesting. He later testified as a government witness against F. Lee Bailey, who he worked with, when he was accused of trying to keep $20 million in stock that one of his clients should have forfeited to the government. Wow. Barry Scheck. He was like the nerd guy in there. He was an unknown lawyer that talked about DNA and brought DNA to the field, to the legal field. So he started the Innocent Project, which uses DNA evidence to exonerate people who have been wrongly imprisoned. Wow, he's 74 years old. He teaches at the Benjamin N. Cardona School of Law. And the project that he has started, as far as helping prisoners, has helped overturn over 300 convictions. Mark Furman, some people call him the racist, one of the most hated people. So he was one of the ones that supposedly found the glove, planted it, maybe, and when tapes emerged of him using the N-word, he testified under law with the judge that he's never said the N-word, and they used the tape. So nobody believed in him. He was vilified as a racist. He retired from the LAPD that year and later pleaded no contest to perjury. So he's 72 years old. He's written crime books. He also appears on television and talk shows. I'd like to get him. Caitlin, or Cato Caitlin, we all know him as a very relaxed guy. Like, yeah, man, we're just chilling. He was the guy that lived in Simpson's guest house. He was a struggling actor. He's done reality shows. He's done, movies. He won a landmark case in the field of libel law. Wow. He's 65, and he's appeared on Celebrity Big Brother and is on the Cameo platform where some celebrities, they say your name and they say like, hey, I'm so-and-so, happy birthday, but you have to pay it. So he's 65 years old. He's still just that guy that, in some people's eyes, is just living in that house, just chilling. Wow. Speaking of chilling, and I'm really not being funny, we're going to go back to this case and what people thought of this case with some of the news people that I respect.
Ed, over the years after the acquittal, yes, he had a huge judgment against him for wrongful death, millions of dollars that he owed. He had to start selling a lot of his property to try and raise some of this money to go to the Goldman and I believe Simpson family, but certainly the Goldman family. And then there was this kind of odd spiral. He wrote a book, If I Did It. He at one point sort of dabbled in kind of like a prank show. And it felt like when it came to the general public, there was a reaction to the verdict, and then slowly people were like, can you just go away? Can you stop talking?
Yes, because everybody thought that he was too happy and having fun after everybody watched that trial of the century.
You knew O.J. Simpson. I'm wondering, did he ever kind of speak about kind of his evolving, the way the public sort of approached him and felt about him, the way it has changed over the decades?
Well, I think that people have to realize he knew he was a pariah. And when we think about the idea of some of the things that he did after the fact, there was a need for him to also make money. quite frankly.
Mm.
And so some of the things that many people saw as in poor taste or dubious, some of that was simply that he felt like it's not like I'm going to get a corporate job. It's not like people are going to look at me. And he told me this. We were looking at doing another interview with him, and I sat down at dinner with him to try to convince him. And he said to me, it's not like people are forgiving me for this. It's not like the justice system in this country says if you go through trial and you are presumed innocent at that point, at least the verdict came down that way, that you should be allowed to live your life. And he understood that did not apply to him.
What do you suppose, though? And for many people, he would have been treated as a pariah, but for many people, he was still somewhat of a celebrity. How was he able to hang on to that?
Well, I don't think it's him hanging on to it. I think it's America's obsession with celebrity. And as I said to him at dinner, because people were coming over asking for his autograph, and this was, years after the trial, and he talked about still being famous. And I said to him that night, you realize that it's more infamy than fame now. But either way, you still get the adulation or at least the attention from people. And I think that was less on OJ. He treasured being a celebrity before this. He certainly did not mind it. But I would say that I think, speaks more to people than it does OJ.
So was it us wanting to be around OJ because he was a celebrity, or was it him wanting to be around us because he was a celebrity? It seems like no matter what, by the end of his life, he wanted to be maybe left alone, but still loved. But you want to say, dude, there are some things that you did that people cannot forgive you. I'm just keeping it honest. You're only as famous as you think you are. To some people's eyes, okay, if we don't know you, you're nobody. How many people, when you heard that OJ died, you were like, wow. First thing you thought, not that you feel sorry for the guy, but did he kill those two people? Wow. You're watching, keeping it honest, with yours truly, Anthony Parker, and we are talking about the O.J. Simpson life experience, legacy. And speaking of legacy, when you talk about legacy, you talk about kids. And you wonder, where are O.J.'s kids now? Well, they're not kids, okay? But they're still his kids. So O.J. had 5 children: Sydney, Austin, Arnell, Jason, and Aaron. Where are they now, you say? Aaron Simpson, 55. So Simpson's eldest daughter, she was born on December 4th, 1968, when the football player was 21 years old. She testified at his 1994 trial where he was accused of murdering his second wife, Nicole. She claimed that her father was emotional, distraught, and out of control when he learned of her death. And when Nicole and Ronald were killed, the kids were in the house asleep. Arnell remained a vocal supporter of her father. She stood by her dad, speaking out again during his 2017 parole hearing following his jail sentence for a 2007 armed robbery at a Las Vegas hotel. At the time, she asked that her dad be released so her family could move forward. Ironically, he stayed in jail for 9 years. As a family, we recognize he's not the perfect man, but as a man and a father, he has done his best to behave in a way that speaks to his overall nature and character, she said, after describing him as her best friend. And even when a family member does wrong, are they still the family member that you love? Jason Simpson, 53 years old. Jason and Whitney's second child, Jason, was born in 1970. Jason was by his dad's side during the important moments of his career, including when he was inducted into the Buffalo Bills Hall of Fame in 1990. He also attended the premiere of Naked Gun, 33 1/3, alongside his father, and Nicole and two younger siblings 3 months before Nicole's murder. So they went to the movies 3 months before she was murdered. After the infamous police chase, if you remember, Jason met his father outside the house. He was handcuffed by the police at the time and led back into the house. So as of 2016, Jason was living a private life as a chef. Aaron Simpson. So Simpson and Whitney welcomed their third child recently. Well, not recently. Daughter Erin in 1977. And this is sad because just 1 month shy of her second birthday, she tragically drowned in a pool. And that's one thing OJ really did was talk about that daughter. Sydney Brooks Simpson, 38. So Sydney, OJ, and Nicole's first child together was born on October 17, 1985. She was only 8 years old when her mom died and was helped raised by her aunt and Nicole's sister after Nicole's death. Sydney and Justin moved to Florida in 2000, 6 years after their mom's death, and have lived in relative privacy since. Sydney graduated from Boston University in 2010 with a degree in sociology, and she spent time in Atlanta before she moved to St. Petersburg, Florida. And as of 2016, she works in real estate as an owner of multiple properties in Florida, and she oversees. So she's doing good. That same year, February 2015, Sydney and her brother Justin attended the wedding of their cousin. They were photographed in the ceremony. So a lot of the Simpson kids, they just kind of did their own thing. And last but not least, Justin Ryan Simpson. So he's one that is on he's on social media a lot. And well, it's good to see that this is what he does. OJ's youngest child, Justin, was born on August 6, 1988. He was 5 years old when his mom was murdered outside the house as he slept. Like his sister, Justin works in real estate and as of 2016 was employed by Caldwell Banker. He is an agent based in St. Petersburg, telling the Tampa Bay Times it's a great place to live. Why not St. Pete? It's gorgeous here. In February 2022, Justin announced on his Instagram that he was expecting a child with his partner, a baby girl. They named her Lana. We are extremely excited, scared, nervous, and in love. Okay, that's nice. In only a few months, we will be welcoming little Lana and can't wait for you to meet her. So that's what the kids are doing now. Wow. That's very nice to see. You are watching. Yours truly, Anthony Parker Alexander. Keep it honest. You have any questions or comments, you can email yours truly. Email address is parkerman2011@gmail.com, parkerman2011@gmail.com. You can call me, leave a voice message. That number is 216-702-3718, 216-702-3718. And don't forget to hit the like and share button.
Remember O.J. Simpson's children attending a Hollywood premiere with their parents.
Justin, Sydney, Nicole, Jason.
It was just 3 months before the murder of Simpson's wife, Nicole. Sydney and Justin held on tight to their father at Nicole's funeral. Arnell and Jason, Simpson's two older children from his first marriage, stood by him during the so-called trial of the century. So where is everyone today?
I'm Arnell Simpson, my dad's oldest child.
Arnell is now 48 years old. She was at the hearing today in Nevada to show support at her dad's parole hearing. Jeffrey Felix, a former corrections officer who got to know Simpson in prison, says Simpson is very close to Arnell.
OJ plans on moving in with his oldest daughter in Florida. She has like a townhouse or a duplex down there for a few months, maybe a year, till he gets on his feet, and then he'll be back on his own again.
I'm a chef.
Simpson's oldest son, Jason, is now 46 years old. He's a chef, reportedly in Atlanta. The younger kids are also grown up. Sydney graduated from Boston University in 2010. Here she is last year in St. Petersburg, Florida, walking her dog. She is now 31 and keeps a very private life. The youngest Simpson is Justin. He's a successful real estate agent based in South Florida. His company's website describes him as offering communication negotiation skills that give his clients the competitive edge.
And boy, that's very impressive. So you had my version where I read it, and then you also had the video. His kids are doing good. Wow. You wonder if his dad didn't really have a lot of friends, especially after the murder trial. Were his kids there for him? And did his kids think that, even though you did bad things, you're still our father? Something to think about. Again, you're watching Keeping It Honest, yours truly, Anthony Parker Alexander, and this show called O.J. Simpson, Keeping It Honest. You know what we've been doing on the show, which I like? We've had a conversation with you guys and also some of the media people. Like I said, I went all over the internet and was watching news shows and seeing how they were going to do a perspective on O.J. Simpson. And it's one that I like because it was reporters, people that have interviewed him, people that have known him, people in the legal system who are fair and balanced, who are giving their opinions and also the facts of O.J. Simpson. When you have a person that passes away and they have that much of a legacy, the impact, he didn't just make an impact with himself, his kids. He made it with the Golden family. He made it with his ex-wife, their family, and he also made it with America, black and whites, just everybody getting along. So I said to myself, I want to do this conversation with parts of the media as we discuss in an interesting way what OJ's life on this planet meant to not just only him, but to us. So we have one of my favorite people. Her name is Anna Marie, and she's a reporter on CBS. I really have enjoyed her. And she's telling her story, but also interviewing people regarding the life and death of O.J. Simpson.
I want to bring in one more voice for us. Bring in Entertainment Tonight co-host Michelle Turner. She's joining us now on the phone. Michelle, we have been talking about O.J. Simpson's life, but inevitably we're talking an awful lot about the trial, not just the crime, but also the cultural moment that occurred during this trial and the evolving cultural character, I guess, of O.J. Simpson. It's sort of hard to sum up, and it's really hard to explain if you weren't kind of really paying attention back then, because the way people have felt about O.J. Simpson has changed radically since his time on the football field to now his death.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you think about that trial. I think it was watched by about 150 million people on Court TV, and that was, in the inception and really cemented Court TV and what courtroom, playing out on television, what that looked like for us. It was the public's fascination with it. I'm actually watching, video of this trial on television right now. And it was so fascinating at the time because, yes, we had this figure who was beloved on the football field and then also had made his mark in Hollywood. I mean,
and you think about that, he really did make his mark.
He, was in several Naked Gun movies, and he was in the Towering Inferno, and he had all the Hertz rental car ads of OJ running through and jumping over, things in the airport. All of those things is how we saw him, and we saw him as a beloved figure. And then here you had this just incredible shift, and we're all seeing this play out in front of us on television, and it became also a bit of why we are such a voyeuristic society, and in Hollywood as well, because we were consuming all of this on a daily basis, and no one could get enough.
Yeah,
no one could get enough of seeing this.
It's so true. And, we talked a little bit earlier with Ed about how divisive this trial was, how it was a moment in time when, it was a moment in time when the LAPD was under a lot of criticism for the relationship that it had with African Americans.
And then how many people, compared to back then, who didn't believe that cops were there for you, how many people today has that changed? Back then you had the Rodney King case, where he was beat and it was filmed. And even with the O.J. Simpson case, now you look at this guy right there, he was loved by millions. He was loved by white millions, Caucasian millions. Black people didn't really think of him as an African American. And when he got in trouble, Black people thought of him as an African American.
It just seems stunning when I think about how there were cheers when he was acquitted and how that changed over time. But can you kind of bring us back to, how you were feeling or how people felt when that acquittal came down?
So let's think about that. There is right there, right when he was acquitted of the murders of the two people. And if I'm correct, I do remember there was racial division because Black people thought he should have been innocent, white people thought he should have been guilty. And it's amazing because the jurors, most of the jurors, they just said pretty much, well, we believe that he's not innocent of a killing, but reasonable doubt. And I guess there's a difference between reasonable doubt and being innocent. But the division of the country and the world was crazy back then. And it still could be crazy now.
I remember where I was. So I was a college student, and I was working in a retail store when it was handed down, when the verdict was handed down, and I remember just silence. Because I was also working in a place where there weren't a lot of minorities, and it was just silence. But what I remember distinctly was that split screen of people watching, and there were people, I think it was like in Inglewood, and then there were a video of people somewhere else, and it was like Black people and white people, and just the dichotomy of the two reactions. I still remember that's burned into my head of how when you saw the community of mostly minority people, there were cheers, and then the community of white people, they were sitting stunned. And you're right, that sentiment has changed over time, but it was all part of what the division was in the country at the time, because we had seen, the Watts riots, we had seen the 92 riots in LA from Rodney King, and we had seen like these images of police brutality and what people felt like, how Black men had been treated. So then here you have this Black man who may not have been connected to the Black community and of his own doing and of his own, saying, may not have really been connected to the Black community at that time, but the Black community still felt like he's one of our own, and they connected to the police brutality part of it and what they saw as an injustice in a lot of ways with the system, and they connected to OJ in that way. And so we saw all of that playing out. And I remember even conversations within my own family, how people were split, and how, some people would say, oh, he didn't do it, he was set up, because we also saw Mark Furman. Who, a lot of people in a lot of ways feel like won that case for the defense in his actions and his words and what he was doing. And people really did feel like the police had planted evidence. But then on the other side, you saw people saying, guys, let's be logical here. Look at all of this evidence, and why is he on this, why are they chasing him? And also remember that day of the low speed chase with the Bronco, the NBA finals were on the air at that time. And it really, there was a split screen on television of.
So look at this, what she's saying. Well, think about this. NBA finals was on. OJ taking place.
The NBA finals in a picture-in-picture and the OJ chase, and they didn't really know what to do. Do they air the NBA finals or do they air the OJ chase? I mean, it was such huge news at that time.
Man, Michelle, you hit on so many layers, just sort of taking me back in time. And, you know, you sort of said this very quickly, but you talked about O.J. Simpson's connection to the African-American community at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another layer, right? He's married to this beautiful white woman. He's living in a very wealthy section of LA. And many of the people that he's associating with are white. And there was a conversation about, geez, when the chips are down, when your back is against the wall, now you're remembering.
You come back to the Black community.
Exactly, exactly.
So think about this too. How many people, entertainers, politicians who are African Americans, who are well known, who you feel aren't really in the Black community anymore or support the Black community? All right, we're presently in a bunch of situations like this where an African American, be it male or female, is in the middle of the news and did something allegedly bad, and to the African American community, it looks like they're being persecuted or prosecuted. Then are we looking at them as being Black? We could name a lot. We could name Tiger Woods. We could name Puff Daddy. We could name Fannie Willis. Currently, all of these people and more are in a situation where allegedly they're being prosecuted by the media and society, and people have felt like they've gone away from the Black community, but because they're persecuted or prosecuted, that we have their back. But to me, if you did something wrong, whether you're Black or white, we should not have your back. Okay, you should pay the consequences.
Exactly, which also led to kind of a division within the community about how they felt about this case, about O.J. Simpson. I want to acknowledge that Lana Zach has come, and she's sitting right next to me. Lana, it's really good to see you. It's great to have you here. As we were talking earlier, pretty much everyone remembers where they were when this verdict came down, right? And for me, I was still in school, but we were not going to class, and they had put a TV up in kind of like the general meeting area, because I was in college, the general meeting area, and everyone was transfixed.
Right,
and
we were
I
all
was in
kids.
Canada.
We were all kids, and we were all watching this,
Right.
and we didn't actually have the guidance to try and process what was happening, but we knew that race was involved, social justice was involved, questions about how Black and brown people interact with the police.
Yep.
All of that was something that we as children were trying to navigate.
Yeah.
And you see that scene right there where he's putting on the glove, and then Johnny Cochran says, you must have quit. I forget how if the glove doesn't fit, then you must have quit. So the glove was tight on OJ, but then a lot of people didn't know till later on that it had been washed. And so when he put it on, it was tight. But a lot of people look at this as one of the, I guess, situations that they'll remember where it was proven in their eyes that OJ was innocent because he couldn't fit the glove. But the glove was wet, what had been washed, and was tight, so it was hard to fit. And he did, and he was acquitted.
This time. And then our feelings about that became even more complicated as O.J. Simpson continued to live his life, and as you mentioned before, the book that he published, If I Did It, and how that also added so much to us as a society as we're trying to process and understand it. And I'm so grateful that we have Ricky Kleeman here, who was part of trying to help a nation understand that. Ricky, how much were you obviously acutely aware of these other conversations that were happening at kitchen tables and lunchroom tables in some cases, and how this trial actually addressed that at times in the courtroom?
I think that all of us who were working on the case live in Los Angeles on this whole block of scaffolds where each network had a set up in the air, that we would also meet late at night. We would get done around 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And we would tend to have a great deal of our conversations because our life was all in common. So we shared stories that we heard from family. We shared stories we heard from friends. And of course, we also all read the news. And so we really understood that these conversations were happening around the country. And of course, amongst us, the anchors and reporters, these conversations were happening with us. I had the privilege of anchoring and having as my guests some of the finest lawyers from the greater Los Angeles area who would be up with me for 2 or 3, sometimes 4 hours at a time, sitting up on the scaffold. And when we were not on camera, because we were watching the case, we would also converse. And we really saw that many of the lawyers and academicians who were guests were torn, because you could look at the case in terms of just prosecution and defense, and you could also look at the case in a much deeper way, which was about society. And it was also the thought of how the public viewed the police at the time, and how the African American public in Los Angeles was truly an oppressed population at that time. You had the police culture at that time, which was anything but good. And then you had the African American population, their culture, who feared the brutality, who feared the corruption. One of the things I remember best of the discussions about that was we as people participating in explaining the case to America, we were given the copies of the discovery that would come out, that would be made public. And one of the things we saw was all the information about Mark Furman's hearings to get a disability to go off the job. So if we had it, the defense had it. And so when F. Bailey cross-examined Mark Furman.
And this guy, Mark Furman, very interesting. He is, in some people's eyes, the epitome of a, I guess, racist white police officer. Some people still think there are a lot of Mark Furmans out there. Unfortunately, with life, people are going to be who they're going to be. There are a lot of good police out there, but then there also are a lot of racist cops, whether you're a black cop or whether you're a white cop. But his legacy is what she's talking about.
On the witness stand, and here Mark Furman is the detective who is being accused of planting the glove on O.J. Simpson's property. And F. Lee Bailey knows, because he's read what I've read, which says about the word, which tells about the words that Mark Furman has used as to why he feels he should no longer have a badge and a gun. So when Effie Bailey asks, have you ever used the N-word in the past years? There was only one principal answer, because it was all about why he wanted to get that disability. And Mark Furman lied. And F. Lee Bailey had him dead to rights. So what you saw was being reflected in the living rooms, in the bedrooms of people around the country. Another thought I had about that was we knew that people around the country were working during the day. They would tape the trial. And when they came home at night, they would watch the trial at night. So for years after that, all of us who were simply the people who explained the trial to the public, we were seen on the street as, oh, that's the man or the woman who was involved in the O.J. Simpson case. So it changed our lives. And what we need to remember is that we are merely chroniclers of history. The history was made on that terrible night when Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman were savagely murdered.
Yeah, so which one was the history? When those two were murdered, or when we had the verdict, or even with O.J. Simpson dying at the age of 76? Sorry about the buffeting. The more technology has advanced, the more sometimes we depend on it, which is a good and bad thing. So you think about this. Does anybody, I'm just curious, have any VHS tapes of the O.J. Simpson trial? Are you better now in society because of the O.J. Simpson trial? When you were a kid, or when you were a younger adult, or even an older adult, how has society changed? Has it gotten better for race relations? Has it gotten worse? We've had a Black president, African-American president. We've had presidents, African-American of colleges. We've had African-Americans in a bunch of things, which has been good. But then you still look at this, African-Americans are still getting killed. African-Americans are still getting denied jobs. You have the political process, and I can tell you from being an African-American involved in politics, there's a lot of racism in there too. So the more things change, the more things stay the same, or is there a level that society lets African Americans get, and then they stop them from being there? Some people think that. Some people think the sky's the sky's the ceiling, but it shows you even today, with O.J. Simpson dying, it brings back memories. It brings back things that make you question, am I better off today than I was when the world was really split on racism?
The fact was, history was made on the day of the O.J. Simpson verdict. I'm really proud that I was able to help educate people in America at a time when they hungered for the real analysis of cases. I think in many ways, we may see that again this year.
Had you at the beginning of this brand new network, Court TV. Nichelle, I know you've got to go, so I just want to kind of ask you for.
And that's interesting. So she feels we may see that again. How do you feel? Has it slowed down? Okay, because something like this happened where there's Court TV all over the place. But could something like this rivet the world? And would it be a race relations kind of thing? Has there been the next O.J. Simpson trial in the past 30 years?
Some maybe closing thoughts. Just thinking about O.J. Simpson's sort of his life arc, going from sort of poor kid to phenom on the football field. It's really sort of an all-American hero story.
Very much so.
To what he became in sort of these last days. We found out that he had prostate cancer in February, but before that, he was kind of like, the punchline for late night talk show jokes and, quick hits on TMZ if they needed something. I'm just kind of, I'm trying to sort of digest how he will be remembered now that he's passed on.
And some of the film that we're showing, like right here, you see OJ now. This is when he was going to court for kidnapping and stealing his memorabilia. And ironically, when he went to, technically, I guess he's had 3 court cases. He had the court case as far as the O.J. Simpson trial. And then he had the civil suit, which the Goldman family did win. It was for $30 million. And the family has said they lucky if they gotten even half of that. So they're trying to go after the rest of his estate now. And then you had where he was in court for kidnapping and trying to get his memorabilia back. And ironically, he was found guilty on that. And he did 9 years in prison. Some people say that was payback for the killings, karma, you could say. But he did 9 years for that. And he got out and lived the last years of his life pretty much being OJ, a happy-go-lucky man who had really a hard life. But to the public, he always appeared happy.
Well, I work in Hollywood, and it seems like it's like the quintessential Hollywood script, right? Like someone would, this is what writers would write a movie about, is this man who pulled himself up by the bootstraps. He in 1968 wins the Heisman Trophy, goes on to have this incredible NFL career, then becomes even larger than life, as a spokesperson, an actor, and a beloved figure in Hollywood, and marries the beautiful woman, and they're kind of the it couple in a lot of ways, and has all the famous friends, connected to the Kardashians and all of that. And then it turns, and that's act 2, and it just, I grew up a football fan. So in the early days, you can't deny what he did in that realm, but the life after football is so murky and so riddled with just ills and violence and all of these things. I mean, and then don't forget when he was found guilty civilly, and then afterwards he spent 9 years in prison because he was found guilty of armed robbery and things for trying to, in his words, get his memorabilia back that had been stolen from him. There's just so much there. So much meat there in a life of 76 years. And where in the beginning of his life, you would think we would be, eulogizing him in the words of this football hero. We're actually talking about him in a very tragic and sad state of a person who most people in this country believe is a double murderer.
Yeah.
So it's a tough day to talk about this. I mean, we're leading our show with this tonight. I called to say, how are we handling this? And they're like, no, we're leading our show. And I thought, well, of course we are. But at the same time, wow, it's just, there's a lot of emotions surrounding it. And people are going to be talking about this for a long time. I mean, in a lot of ways, he was the birth of Court TV. Yeah. He cemented all of these things for us. And in his last days, I mean, his family says they were surrounded by him, and they say he was loved. And I guess that's, here we are, here we are. It's hard to put into words.
You look at this picture right there, a very chilling picture of a man. He could have been, like she said, eulogized as a famous football player, Heisman Trophy winner, MVP, an actor, a great pitchman, and one of the first African American celebrities that America, black or white, loved. The Juice, great name. But instead of that, he's remembered as a football player, pitchman, and possible two-time murderer. Maybe using that last 3 words as the first part of his obituary. Very sad story for everybody involved.
Everything, because like you said, we've all been talking about this, and I've been listening to you all talk, and I thought, oh gosh, yeah, I forgot that, and I forgot about Judge Ito, and I sat down with Christopher Darden, I remember, for a very long conversation, and we got so deep into the fact that he, was castigated as a black man for being on the prosecution team, and there was just so many layers to the OJ story and a life lived that we'll be talking about it for ages to come.
And
That
all
is
of
so
those,
true.
And all of those layers, they internal to them were conflict. That
Yes.
at one level you think, well, the police are wrong. They planted evidence. And then at another level you think, he's wrong. He clearly did it.
Right.
And then another level you think, no, the glove doesn't fit, right? Like there were so many layers to all of
So
this.
many layers.
And so many of them were in direct contrast to one another.
And questions about what is justice.
Yes.
Really.
Right.
And
you
at the
spoke
end of
about
the
that
day,
too.
the Brown family and the Goldman family still do not feel like they have gotten justice. I mean,
Yeah, so let's not forget that the Goldman family and the Brown family, they feel justice wasn't served, even to this day. So many unanswered questions with the death of O.J. Simpson.
even in the civil case, they got a $30 million judgment, and they have only been paid about $500,000, or about $500,000 of that judgment from memorabilia sales. So at the end of the day, they still don't feel like they have gotten justice, and those two people are dead.
Yeah.
And they would obviously never feel like they had justice, even if they had received full pay.
Michelle, it's been so good talking to you. Thank you so much for jumping on the phone so quickly with us.
So that was Michelle Turner, and she is one of the hosts on Entertainment Tonight. So that was good to have her on there. You're watching, of course, Keeping It Honest with yours truly, Anthony Parker. You have any questions or comments, you can email yours truly as parkerman2011@gmail.com, parkerman2011@gmail.com. We've been doing a Parker twist. O.J. Simpson, Keeping It Honest. Some people are mourning his passing. Some people are saying payback is a mother. Some people are saying, well, he died. But let's remember the victims. Some people are saying O.J. unfortunately killed the two people. Some aren't. Some think it's a racial thing. Some people think of cops and that they're as prejudiced as they were back then. Some people are saying, hey, you know what? Life has gotten better for us. It's all in the eye of the beholder. I've said this before. We're going to talk about politics a little bit with this. Or the eye of the beholder. Here's a phone right here. Okay? Here's a mouse right here. We're looking at this. Mouse, phone. But in some people's eyes, this isn't the mouse. And this is the phone. So no matter what I tell you, you may not believe that this is a phone, and you may not believe this is a mouse. People see the same thing, but they go different ways. Whether somebody's innocent or guilty, whether somebody killed somebody or didn't kill anybody, or whether You see these. Now, these are glasses. Some people may not see these as glasses. Some people may see these as something else. But it's in the eye of the beholder. O.J. Simpson trial, very interesting. So I'm going to read this right here. It's commentary. And this was by, and it's going to be a cold read, John Blake of CNN. O.J. Simpson gave us a preview of today's America. Simpson's death says something more about the present than the past in America. And that split screen reaction to his verdict shows why. What happened at his trial offered a sneak preview of the country we live in today. Before there was fake news, there was fake DNA. For those who weren't alive then, it's hard to convey the impact of the verdict. It landed like a punch in the face. How could two groups of Americans watch the same event and absorb the same information, but arrive at totally different conclusions? Easily, it turns out. We do it all the time today, especially when it comes to race and politics. White and non-white Americans live in increasingly separate worlds, unable to comprehend one another. The racial cleavage revealed by the 1995 verdict has now widened to a canyon. Consider these diverging views of what's supposed to be a common reality. This part is interesting, and this is a great example. Some say January 6, 2021 was an insurrection sparked by a racist demagogue. Others say it was a legitimate political protest led by patriots. Some say racism remains a prevalent problem for many non-white Americans. Others say white Americans are the primary victims of discrimination. Some say America is a nation of immigrants who bolster the economy and reinvigorate the country. Others say non-white immigrants bring crime and are poisoning the blood of our nation. If there is a phrase that captures this dueling version of America, it may be alternate facts. Remember that phrase, alternate facts? It entered the American lexicon in 2017 during an exchange between Kellyanne Conway, then his senior advisor to President Donald Trump, and an NBC journalist. When the interviewer pressed Conway on a false White House claim about Trump's inaugural drawing the largest crowd ever, if you remember that, she responded that Press Secretary Sean Spicer had given alternative facts. But 20 years before Conway coined the term, Simpson's trial had already revealed the potency behind such reasoning. No matter how much overwhelming evidence you have on your side, there are always alternative facts. The prosecution in the Simpson murder trial thought their case was a slam dunk, with strong forensic evidence tying Simpson to the killings. I remember that because they had the glove, they had the sock, they had a lot of stuff. It didn't matter. There were alternative facts. Before there was fake news, there was fake DNA. And remember, some people say, this is me talking, that the glove may have been planted by Detective Foreman. What started in that Los Angeles courtroom has now spread throughout America's political and pop culture. Seeing isn't believing anymore. Is that video real or deep fake? You know, and some people even think, as I'm off that, about there was no moon landing. Really, how many people believe that? There's a lot. Did that student write that term paper, or was it generated by AI? Is that a person friending you in social media or a bot? Simpson gave us a preview of an America in which it's becoming harder for anyone to believe their eyes or ears. It's no wonder that so many people followed the news of the solar eclipse. It was a rare communal experience where millions of Americans witnessed the same event and few, through not all, talked about alternative facts. So, off topic right here, saw that total eclipse. Now, how many people looked at that? And think about this. At the same time, across the whole world, everybody saw that total eclipse. Now, who could prove that that was fake? Maybe there's some people out there who are proving it. but literally everybody with their own eyes at the same time, the same moment, the same day, different locations, saw the same thing. Now let's go back to this. Politicians have adopted the Simpson trial playbook. Now there was a surreal moment during the Simpson trial that could have been easily missed. Let me know if you think about this. After the acquittal, the jurors were filing out of the courtroom when a black man, stopped and gave Simpson a Black Power salute. The raised fist symbolizing defiance and black pride. And if you can't, go to YouTube and look at that. See if you see that. I'm going to look for that too, to see if there was somebody that gave him like a thumbs up. To anyone who had followed Simpson's career, that moment was laced with irony. Critics say Simpson spent years running away from his blackness with as much vigor as he eluded NFL defenders. And some people have said that. He cultivated a non-threatening public persona that wouldn't make white people nervous and refused to take controversial stands on racial issues. Friends quoted Simpson as once saying, and I did see this on a video, "I'm not black, I'm OJ." So when the African-American man, and back then he was one of the first ones on TV, because some people say, you know what, he's non-threatening. We're not scared of him and we're not embarrassed by him. But in the black community, he was also one of the first black people to be out there and loved by mainstream media. So he did a lot of good first. But that's why he had to, I guess, break the racial law. But he was just looking at money. Remember, he said, "I'm not black, I'm OJ." So during the murder trial, Simpson and his team of lawyers deployed a legal strategy that has now infiltrated American politics. They cast him as a victim of a vast conspiracy hatched by unsavory characters in the justice system. Think about Donald Trump. People saying they're going after him, he's bad. But the legal people that are going after him, in some ways, they've got a lot of bad stuff in their background too that is kind of hurting them going after Trump. So when you're going after Simpson and supposedly he's bad, you got Mark Furman, you got some of the other different things that are trying to put him in jail, different situations that really don't make sense. So if you're going after somebody, make sure that you know your house is in order, whether you're going after Simpson or you're going after Trump. So they highlighted racist epithets from an LAPD detective investigating the Simpson murder that he had used once in a taped interview. They hinted at personal biases held by judges and attorneys. So Simpson then took on a new role. As they were watching this society, they kind of saw this. He became the stand-in for black people who had been railroaded by the justice system. At the 2005 funeral for Johnny Cochran, Simpson's lead attorney, the Reverend Al Sharpton, delivered a eulogy in which he underscored his historic dynamic in describing Black America's reaction to the verdict. With all due respect to you, Brother Simpson, we didn't clap for OJ. We were clapping for Johnny, Sharpton said. We were clapping because for decades, our brothers, our cousins, our uncles had to stand in a well with no one to stand up for them. Black Americans have long viewed the justice system as rigged, and they still do. But now millions of white Americans share the same view, thanks in part to Trump. For some, white is a new black. Wow. The former president is facing 4 criminal cases and 88 charges. He has pleaded not guilty to every charge and claims to be a victim of corrupt prosecution. And he still has millions of white supporters standing behind him. About 85% of Republicans in the 2020 midterms were white, though there are signs that he may be attracting more black and also Latino voters. One commentator wrote that Trump is following Simpson's script of victimization. Where Simpson stood in as a symbol for the entire history of racist police aggression in the United States, Trump plans to make himself a symbol for all the grievances of his largely white conservative base. Wow. He and his supporters argue that just like black people, Trump is a victim of a two-tiered justice system. As one supporter told a reporter in 2020, after Trump was impeached, Trump may be vulgar, immoral, narcissistic, but he stands up to the Democrats. To those of us who support what he has accomplished, it feels like he's our OJ, a Trump supporter said. Wow. Even former President Barack Obama once noted a similar comparison. Trump is for a lot of white people what OJ's acquittal was to a lot of black folks. You know it's wrong, but it feels good, Obama reportedly said. Some public figures' legacy shrinks after their passing. Simpson's NFL exploits were long eclipsed by his murder trial. But there are parts of Simpson's legacy that may loom even larger if Americans keep hurling toward a future where we no longer share a common reality. Excuse me. We believe in alternative facts, and we conclude that almost every institution, from the media to the justice system, is hopelessly rigged. Take a look around at the fractious, violent, and bombastic landscapes we now exhibit. Simpson may have died, but he helped give birth to the America we now live in. So this is John Blake. He's a senior writer at CNN, and he's an author of More Than I Imagined, what a black man discovered about the white mother he never knew. Wow. So you heard that commentary. And if you go back, O.J. Simpson, he accomplished a lot of things. He was the first for many things. But again, at the end of the day, you pray that God has your soul and you redeem yourself if you've done a lot of bad things. Case in point, again, I tell people, don't look at people as heroes. Be your own hero. You don't have to look up to a celebrity. Be your own hero. Maybe have somebody in life that is there and doing things for you. Because heroes, they disappoint us. And we can name too many of them. Recent heroes. Bill Cosby. To name one of the few. When you're being thrust out there and you kind of forget your blackness or forget where you came from, karma's going to come back. And I want you to look at the bottom of our screen. You see the scroll? That is the National Domestic Abuse Hotline. Pretty much. If anybody is being abused or you know somebody being abused, you can call that hotline. It's 1-800-799-7233. 1-800-799-7233. Out of the years since the O.J. Simpson trial, I'm just curious, how many people are using this domestic abuse hotline? How many people are being abused? How many people are being noticed? How many people that you know of are being abused? It's something that, see something, say something. That's being a hero. We always do things with Parker twist, as I always say. And this is interesting because what do you want to be remembered as? If you're somebody like OJ and you think you've done good, or you could care less, really. You could care less if you've done good or not. You're just doing you. Does it matter how you want to be remembered? Well, in some people's eyes, they want to be remembered in one way. And in other people's eyes, they just don't care because they think they've done the right thing, such as OJ.
Known as a pro football icon, a Hall of Famer, a Heisman Trophy winner, you're not thought of that now by most people when your name is mentioned.
Well, most people that I come in contact with are very complimentary and very nice. And I can't live in your world. I can't live in the people who dislike me and stuff. I don't live in that world. I only can live in the world that I live in. And on a day-to-day basis, I've gotten support and love from the American public. And I think the lady in that article tried to tell you that despite what you hear, wherever I go, people go out of their way to make me feel welcome. Just even recently, I had one of the commentators on one of these primetime night shows want me to come on and was shocked. We went out to dinner 2 nights ago in the middle of Brentwood, in a Brentwood restaurant, and he was shocked at the reaction of the people in the restaurant, the women, white women.
But I'm shocked at the negative reaction that we got to having you appear on the show, even though that we could ask you anything we wanted. Let me ask you, if you could change one thing about your life currently, or something that what would you change?
About my life, you know, I mean, going all the way back when. I think if that really first comes to mind is that I don't think I would have ever been unfaithful to either one of my wives.
Okay. Would you trade your life for Nicole or Ron Goldman now? Would you give up your life?
I would have put my life certainly on the line for Nicole. I mean, I would have died for her. Yes, I would have. And I loved her. I truly, honestly believe that a kid needs a mother more than they need anyone. The most important person in my life was my mother. I don't think I can do the job with my kids that Nicole was doing and has done with my kids. All I can do is try the best that I can. Yes, I would trade for Nicole, but I would be certainly lying if I said I would trade with Ron Goldman. I don't know Ron Goldman. People die every day.
You've gone through this. Is there any chance that you could have been involved in these murders and blocked it out? And not
Absolutely not. No.
Are you in denial?
Absolutely not. None at all. Not at all.
All right. O.J. Simpson has been our guest here.
Wow. So there you go, man. So he says he wished he would have been a better father and that he loved his wife and kids. And no matter what you make of this situation, O.J. Simpson dies at the age of 76. And you think about what would have been. Will we ever know if he did kill the people? But the one thing we do know is that we shouldn't forget the memories. Of what everybody's been through in this country. He didn't just affect himself, he affected everybody. And one of my things I look at the life being ironic and how we go down these roads. And sometimes you think you're going down this road, you're going down that road. OJ thought pretty much he was going to still be here. And as we get ready to close, the interesting thing was, he still wanted to be loved. The Juice wanted to be loved. At the end, he was loved and hated. But this was one of his last, video posts. It was his last video post. And this was OJ at one point feeling real fine.
Yours truly, boy, what a beautiful day it is here in Las Vegas. Even though the is indoors, it wouldn't matter. Still, it's nice and beautiful. Hey, let me take a moment to say thank you all of you who reached out. My health is good, obviously, but hey, I think I'm just about over it, and I'll be back on that golf course hopefully in a couple of weeks. But it was very nice hearing from you and hearing those good, positive words. Thank you. Now, as far as the game goes, obviously, my prediction, and it's not hope, I'm basing it on who's on the field. I see a 24-20 win by the 49ers. And that, as I said, that's not hope. I'm basing that on the quality of the players that are on the football field. So who's going to be MVP? Purdy, or McCaffrey. Of course, if KC wins, it'll probably be Mahomes. But I'm predicting number 19. And I'm not talking about Johnny Unitas. In any event, well, we got a few more hours and we'll know. Please, I hope you're with friends, the ones who are not going to the game. And hey, it should be a great game because all the great players that are involved. Hey, God bless, take care, and I hope your team win if your team is the 49ers. God bless, take care.
Wow. And that was it. O.J. Simpson. Not too long ago, where probably thought he was going to be around. Life is too short. Life is too precious. Just be good to each other. That's all I ask. And again, you have seen what we've been talking about. Domestic hotline number. You know anybody? Or if you're in the middle of that, 1-800-799-7233. You've been watching Keeping It Honest with yours truly, Anthony Parker Alexander. We don't just keep it real. We don't just keep it simple. We keep it honest. If you have any questions or comments, you can email yours truly. It's parkerman2011@gmail.com. parkerman2011@gmail.com. Telephone number 216-702-3718, 216-702-3718. Tried to give you left side, tried to give you right side. Hopefully at the end, you decide. Everything's black and white, but to some people it's not. The legacy, good and bad, of O.J. Simpson. Keeping it honest. Keep it real, keep it simple, keep it honest. I'm Anthony Parker Alexander. We will talk again. And of course, God bless.